Neighbors across Portland and the region are dealing with homeless encampments, and tonight we're taking a close look at how the city of Portland is failing to help neighbors and the homeless in our ongoing special reports asking, is Portland over?
Our Coin 6 investigator, that's Dan Tilkin, here in studio with us with why one neighborhood feels like it is getting nowhere with the city to be able to reclaim their streets and feel safe once again, Dan.
Yeah. Before we get to the specifics of their situation, I want to show you the big picture. We can show you the number of homeless camps the city has cleaned up over the last 5 years. Look at this chart right here. You see it down here, and then it pops up about 3 to 4 years ago, and then it starts going down here, and then it plummets down to 248 because of policies of leaving them alone during the pandemic. So at the same time, if we look at the next chart, the city budget to conduct cleanups has more than quadrupled. The city says that's because the need to more holistically address unsanctioned urban camping has grown, meaning trying to get people into homeless services instead of just kicking them out. This slow process right here is part of the reason people feel abandoned.
What rules are you going to enforce? Just tell me that.
Just off of I-5 at North Lombard in Montana.
City officials or whatever should listen to us.
Neighbors say they've tried to get the city to help them clean up this homeless camp.
We were willing to share, but this isn't sharing when they just take over a neighborhood and have no laws that they have to follow.
Over months, their pictures document the tents, trash, and RVs on both sides of the fence that separates the neighborhood from the freeway. They've seen fires like this one, had packages stolen, and been threatened.
We're completely tolerant of people that are experiencing houselessness. That's not a big deal, but it reached kind of a threshold or a line when we started observing a lot of drug deals, started observing physical violence between people. At one point we had somebody that wanted to get our son, our oldest son who's 2.5, into a car.
The neighbors told us they've been begging the city to do something. You can see on the city's website for reporting homeless camps, each dot represents complaint after complaint after complaint filed over weeks. Finally, in September, neighbors were told a cleanup was coming. Again, look on the city's website. You can see the camp on North Lombard in Montana prominently displayed the week of September 13th as cleaned. And note the next line, locations listed in boldface font indicate campsite removal. North Lombard in Montana is certainly in bold type. The problem is, the neighbors say the cleanup crew left a lot of garbage behind on the neighborhood side of the fence and did not touch the camp on the ODOT side of the fence, even though an intergovernmental agreement means it's the city's responsibility to move people out of homeless camps. You're exasperated.
It's frustrating. I mean, I know everybody in the city is dealing with it, and it's just galling to me that they're lying now and saying they're removing these camps. So everybody else in the city, if they look at this website, says, oh, that camp got cleaned up, great. Sure didn't.
The day we visited, the trash on the neighborhood side of the street was being cleaned up by Terrence Moses, who runs Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Need more people like you.
You know, I just think that hopefully people see through me that we could be a little more compassionate and step outside of our comfort zone and help other folks.
Terrence spends 6 days a week doing the cleanup work the city can't get to through donations and spends a lot of time trying to build trust with people living in homeless camps to steer them towards services. Terrence also understands why these neighbors are so frustrated.
Where is government dropping the ball?
A lot of things that the government is dropping the ball on is there's no urgency behind it. They're spending a lot of money on unnecessary types of trucks to do this kind of work. They spend a great deal of their time having to bag items because they use box trucks. And they're not funneling the money into the smaller organizations that are doing the big majority of the work.
The neighbors complained to the city's one point of contact campsite reporting system, but we can show you why it's not that easy. At this camp, you can see electrical cords coming from a utility box to tents. At least one box says CenturyLink, which is now called Lumen. A spokesman told us, "We understand the community is frustrated, as are we. We have secured our cross boxes, including placing locks and chains on them. Unfortunately, we continue to see them damaged. It's important to us because the damage can potentially impact important services." Meanwhile, ODOT is responsible for the fence, locking the gate and fixing any holes. And again, ODOT can only clean up camps and garbage if the city works to move people out of the camps first. The people who are responsible for camp cleanups fall under Mayor Ted Wheeler's jurisdiction. But when we asked him about cleaning up freeway camps last spring, he told us this.
I want to be clear, every one of the right-of-ways you just mentioned, the litter, the graffiti, that's not the city. That is the state. Those are ODOT right-of-ways, and that is their responsibility.
When it comes to abandoned vehicles, that's the Bureau of Transportation. And a request to PBOT to make parking on Montana Avenue illegal from a neighbor 2 years ago shows PBOT has been dealing with a heavy caseload for a long time, replying, "Investigations are taking up to 12 weeks to complete based on our backlog of requests and staffing." And also consider the county runs the Joint Office of Homeless Services with the city to oversee the delivery of social services to homeless people. And the person who runs the city's housing bureau is Commissioner Dan Ryan, whose efforts to build safe rest villages for the homeless is taking months longer than expected. Then consider the city is prioritizing which camps are to be cleaned up first based on whether they are high or low impact. As of late last month, 71 camps were considered high impact. But in this statement, the city says, if we were using our pre-COVID-19 standard operating procedures, there would be somewhere between 200 and 300 sites that would meet high impact criteria. The reason there are only 71 is because we have increased the threshold for encampment removals due to the health and safety guidelines we implemented in conjunction with Multnomah County Public Health and the CDC. The city tells us this neighborhood is considered high impact and sent us pictures of the 3 days crews spent cleaning up. But after saying no to our interview request, a spokesperson wrote this. Most of the items in the encampment were deemed personal property, which people placed on vehicles, which meant that we could not collect it. Although we performed a campsite removal, I can understand how some people might think it was partially done. However, we have very strict guidelines about what we can and can't collect, and we always adhere to those guidelines. In regards to the encampment on the other side of the fence, each encampment is assessed and scheduled for removal if deemed necessary on an individual basis. But we have to prioritize the sites that pose the greatest health and safety risks to the community and can only work as much as our resources allow.
I feel like you guys are in a loop.
We are. We're definitely in a loop. This is a Band-Aid. These people who left here are now somewhere else in Portland doing the same thing they did to our neighbor, to other people. And I feel horrible about that because, I mean, nobody deserves to live in the conditions that are now left here, even after they're gone. What you can't see on this report is the smell, and it's bad.
Just days after we met with the neighbors and the street was cleared, RVs parked again. That was followed by these people, dressed in black, showing up in the neighborhood to show support for the homeless and leaving neighbors feeling intimidated.
You said you're not going to surrender.
I'm not. This is our home. We live here. We're not giving this up. We've got 2 little kids. If you would just see them one time walking down the street hand in hand, you would know why we're fighting for this.
Such a fragmented process. I want to show you another reason the city is so overwhelmed and slow to respond. This is a citywide map of real-time complaints about homeless camps over the last month. Look at all the dots here. The latest report shows 992 reports in 1 week. That is not unusual if you show you the next graph. The week the neighborhood was supposedly cleaned up, 2004 new campsite reports identifying 123 active campsites throughout the city were made. 781 of those reports were about people living in their cars.
Wow, Dan, great report. Now, I want to ask, though, you showed us how this problem has gotten so big. That's part of what makes this so difficult, is just how many encampments that these officials and the crews are having to deal with.
Yeah, I want to read some more stats from the city so I get this right. So they tell me it's removing sites that are far larger than the ones they had before the pandemic. Sites that used to take one work crew a half day to remove, now taking 6 crews a couple of weeks to clean. The agency has done roughly 2,800 site assessments. That's each time, 2,800 times somebody's gone out to a site to assess those for safety, cleanup. Can this be done? Is this high priority, high impact? Tough process.
Yeah, we talked about the finger pointing. That's their responsibility. It's ODOT's responsibility. It's the city's responsibility. The bureaus don't talk to each other. Seems to be no coordinated effort. Now, you've tried talking to officials about this. What happened?
The agency in charge of the cleanup doesn't do interviews. So it's kind of this nameless, faceless name with a really long name, group with a long name. So it goes to the mayor. We've asked the mayor multiple times for an interview about this, not heard back.
All right, and we'll continue to follow this as our series is Portland Over.